this is Christian. I just want to introduce Joe, our podcast host. He's going to give you a warning about shit we're going to say.
Thanks, Christian. Now, I know a lot of you are listening right now and are thinking to yourself, what is this? And you know what? Me too. But I think together we'll find out what the fuck this is. There might be curse words, magic, dick jokes, and the occasional fart noise. And if you can't deal with that, well then, go fuck yourself, you big baby. Is that good?
Yeah, that was spot on. Oh my god. Welcome to Heretic Party, a podcast for apostates, and for all the other happy lost souls out there who want to hear crazy stories about living through and living beyond religion. My name's Christian. This is part 2 of an episode that ran long. So if you haven't listened to the first part, go back one episode. You'll know it because it's the one with the really bad audio quality, because we're brand new at this and not great. If you don't want to go back and listen to the previous episode, or it's been a little while, here's a quick recap. When I was 11 years old, I wrote a letter to a Christian fundamentalist group called Focus on the Family. We'll tell you a little more about them in a minute here. I wrote to them to ask for their help saving my friends from the devil. What did my friends do that was damning their souls to hell? They were playing the very scary, very evil game, Dungeons and Dragons. And they had convinced me to play with them. Now, you might hope that a Christian fundamentalist group writing to an 11-year-old might take the time to reassure him that God does not send children to hell for playing a board game. But you can probably guess that's not what happened. In this episode, Joe and I are going to walk you through a Christian radio program that Focus on the Family mailed to me on a cassette. Spoiler alert, the contents of that cassette were way more evil than anything that happens inside of a game of Dungeons and Dragons. Anyway, cool. Here's the show. It was a letter and a cassette that it said something like, hopefully this will help you save your friends from fantasy role-playing games. They can be really evil. They can be really, blah, blah, blah. And so I got out the cassette player and listened to it. And you can imagine how real it seemed to me all of a sudden, right? Because we'll run through the episode here. And I really don't want everyone who listens to this podcast to have to also go listen to Adventures in Odyssey.
Why don't you come along for today's Adventures in Odyssey?
It's a pretty fucked up show. But the episode of Adventures in Odyssey makes the case that these demonic forces are very real. And, it spoke to me so clearly and told me, yes, you did an evil thing because fantasy role-playing games are absolutely evil and you fucked up big time. And, you could have almost ended up as one of these kids who fell to Satan through a game.
So it was everything you had heard about Dungeons and Dragons that made you worried for your soul, I guess? Like, you, as far as you were concerned, you had crossed a line that when you went to heaven, Jesus was going to be like, well, you did play D&D that one time. Or you're just afraid of getting snatched up by demons.
I don't think I realized at the time that the sort of teachings of the Christian church were that once you were saved by Jesus, you couldn't be just like snatched up by demons for committing a sin. I think at that age, I thought it didn't matter what I had done. I had betrayed Jesus and therefore demons were going to come get me.
Dang.
I really thought it was that real. And for years, I'm talking into like my early 20s, I still believed that those were real demons that I saw coming through the window. One of the things I like to talk to post-religious people about is what I call like foundational experiences. These are the experiences that you look back to in your moments of doubt, when you're like doubting your religion what were the experiences that you look back to that you're like, but it has to be real because X happened. And for me, this is one of those experiences. It's going to be embarrassing, but I'm going to share like a bunch of my foundational experiences through this podcast. And I imagine that you and I will talk a lot about our lives on here. And it's going to be really strange and feel really vulnerable. But this was one of mine. I really did believe for years that, like, I think when I got older, I realized that those weren't demons coming through my curtains to snatch me to hell. I think I thought it was the fact that I had opened the door to an occult power that was trying to, like, seduce me into Satanism and witchcraft. And because I was protected by Jesus, or the window, I guess, my Jesus window, that I was able to see them as demons and protect myself by confessing. You know what? We prayed that night too. I'm remembering now. I went and I confessed to her, and she helped me pray and ask for forgiveness for playing D&D. And that's probably why I was able to go to sleep.
Wow.
Because I was so guilty.
Dang.
I was a big troublemaker kid, and I did a lot of awful things that were much worse than that. And I often felt so guilty that I would confess to them really quickly.
I was the same. I remember we would have substitute teachers, and we'd be like, sweet, we're going to watch a movie. But then we'd see that it was one of the ones from the library, like one of the, like, I mean, I was bummed then. I would love to watch them now, like what was it, Hell's Bells?
Yeah.
Like the music one, but there was a D&D one too. And I remember thinking, like, all right, so magic is only good when Jesus does it in the Bible.
Or Gandalf.
Don't be a pussy. Fireball him. Cast protection.
Or the lion from C.S. Lewis. Those are the only ones allowed to use magic. Yeah. Only Aslan and Jesus can use magic. Anyone else uses magic, the devil.
There are other magicians in Narnia too that are not Jesus, which is really frustrating because, like, apparently you could totally be a cool wizard and not go to hell, but you just got to be one of the ones that, you know, somehow you got to have like the blessing of Jesus to be a wizard.
That's so confusing. I think I thought as a kid, like, well, what if I learn magic, but I'm like a good guy, magic guy? Like, that's cool, right? Like David Copperfield, he's a cool guy.
Yeah.
Man, how funny our little brains.
Leanne just pointed out one of the Narnia books is actually called The Magician's Nephew.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was really funny in the Adventures in Odyssey episode that they used the word magician a few times. Because it really blurs the line there. Because sleight of hand magic, totally cool.
Yeah.
Wasn't a problem.
No.
I did know kids who couldn't watch magicians.
Whoa.
It was considered a gateway to, but that wasn't my family. My family drew the line there, I guess.
I also remember when we watched those videos, how they were just roasting all the nerds playing D&D in them. They're all, look at these kids. No friends. They're weird around groups of people, and they don't talk to anyone. It's like, jeez, leave the kids alone. They're just like, because they all look like me and my friends. So we were like,
yeah, accurate. Totally accurate. But here's the fucking thing. We put a lot of, when I say we, I mean American culture puts a lot of value on games of physical prowess, and we put very little value on like games that give kids who have a hard time being social a chance to be social, or kids that have a hard time communicating like a chance to communicate. And fuck it, for my money, like those skills that nerdy kids learn playing games with each other are more valuable than a 16-year-old kid building up enough muscle to, I don't know what the fuck. I'm so bad at sports.
You know, slam a dunk.
A ball, slam a dunk.
one slam of the dunk.
I don't think that sports are invaluable. I think sports are rad, and they teach all sorts of things like teamwork and communication. But I think teamwork and communication can be taught a lot of different ways, and some kids don't have the propensity or the interest in playing sports, and so they play nerdy games. Even though I thought D&D was evil, other nerdy games definitely kept me out of trouble. Not forever, but for a while.
Dad, can I ask you a question?
Sure, honey.
Why are you dedicating your life to blasphemy?
Don't worry, sweetheart. If I'm wrong, I'll recant on my deathbed.
Okay, so
Adventures in Odyssey.
I think I'll talk about Adventures in Odyssey real quickly.
Sounds like a Dio song.
It does. It would be called Adventures in the Rainbow Odyssey. It's a Dio song.
And it would be him like riding a dragon with lightning bolts shooting out of his nipples. I'm about it.
Yeah. I'd also listen to that episode. That'd be great. To understand what Adventures in Odyssey is, you need to know what Focus on the Family is. And for a lot of listeners, I bet there's a tense feeling in their hearts right now just hearing the words Focus on the Family, or like a heart eye roll, because they're frustrating. A lot of the conservative ideas that Christian churches have come from Focus on the Family. Real quickly, let me tell you what Focus on the Family stands for. This is according to Focus on the Family. They stand for creationism, abstinence-only sex education, adoption only by heterosexuals, school prayer, traditional gender roles. They are opposed to premarital sex, pornography, drugs, gambling, divorce, and abortion. They lobby against LGBT rights, against LGBT adoption, against LGBT parenting, and against same-sex marriage. So that's where they stand.
Jeez.
That's the type of organization. And they are far-reaching. In 2019, their revenue was $99 million.
Holy shit.
Tax-free. They employ somewhere between 600 and 700 people, not including volunteers. But it's a massive organization.
I like that their list is like, like you hear that list and you're like, oh, shoot. That's like the list of things to make you not a cool person. Like, do I feel this way about this thing? Shitty. Shitty.
It's seriously the opposite of everything that I believe in.
And to be so, it's another one. That's another one. Just to so confidently go out there and be like, and we're dicks.
I believed in all of those things.
Totally.
Every single one of them. And that's really embarrassing to say. And that is...
It's wild.
It is wild.
An entire shift of principles, almost like... It's like, I guess I'm a bad guy. I guess I'm evil then, because I'm against all these things that I used to me, stand for good and right and everything. So I think that, or at least I've felt that feeling of like, I'm against all these things that are supposed to be good and godly, and is my family going to ostracize me? Are my Christian friends just not going to talk to me anymore?
I mean, just to encourage you, Joe, maybe one of the things we can explore here is your belief or disbelief or disinterest in belief in God really has anything to do with this list of specific dogma from this Christian organization.
That's a great point.
Let's get back on track. So, Adventures in Odyssey was created by James Dobson as an alternative to Saturday morning cartoons. That was the way he put it. It's a daily, or sometimes several times a week, I guess, radio drama about these characters who are model Christians in that they make simple mistakes that are easily solved through prayer and returning to God. It's a very serialized sitcom-y world where if you just admit what you did wrong, everything goes back to normal and you're back in God's good graces by the end of the episode. I mean, I thought God brought that cassette to me because I was willing to admit my mistake. This, as far as I can tell, this is the only episode that begins with a warning from James Dobson himself.
We thought it would be helpful to hear a few words from the founder and president of Focus on the Family, Dr. James
Dix.
I went through lists and lists of episodes, and I could not find a single one where he comes in at the beginning and says like, hey kids, this is James Dobson. Here's the issue. Go get your parents because they have to listen to this with you. I'm not sure what to make of that. Was this so scary? Was this such a big deal when this episode came out that...
I mean, it was probably during the height of the satanic panic. That's kind of...
Yeah, it came out in 1990, August 1990. I mean, honestly, they put a lot of money into it. And it's not a bad show. Like, just objectively, it's a pretty entertaining little show. Organizations like this, like they're political organizations. They really are, but they also... I'm trying really hard not to say awful things. Let's see. They're evil, like money machines. They're evil money machines. That's what they are. They're there to make money and make the people involved rich. And they do that by scaring and angering people.
And isolation.
Absolutely.
To where, like, your reality is, if I screw up this one thing, that opens the door for chaos, for ruin, for every horrible word you could think of for something bad, just for one little thing. And it's because you know nothing else. And that's especially from like a little kid time. Jeez. Man.
Well, and you get locked into that little ecosystem of Christian music, Christian television shows, Christian radio programs. You go to church several times a week, and pretty soon it's your entire life. And it's absolutely isolation.
Which is a cult move.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Exactly. For some reason, the word cult draws a line in my mind where, like, I always think of, like, I was in like some really fucked up situations, but I was never in a cult. Cult is always like one step crazier than how you were raised. You know? But I think I was in a cult. I really think I was. How else can I explain reading that list of all the things that Focus on the Family stands for and saying, I believed every single one of those wholeheartedly, and now I believe none of them? To flip-flop like that, I was brainwashed, right?
Yeah. That's exactly it. That is...
Jesus Christ. Literally.
So then, when a cult gets to be a certain size, like Scientology, does it graduate into a religion?
That's a great question. I want to bring on a religions expert on here to help us like parse out these terms before we get too far into this podcast, because I want to be consistent in the terms we use, you know?
Yeah. But they have to play Redemption with us first.
So down. I'll buy him a set. How else am I going to make sure that Idaho bears redemption seed fruits?
Our gods are dead. Ancient Klingon warriors slew them a millennia ago. They were more trouble than they were worth.
Okay. I think we should get to this Adventures in Odyssey episode. This episode is called Castles and Cauldrons. It's been saved on archive.org. It doesn't air anymore on the syndicated Focus on the Family stuff. The last time it aired, though, was 1999. So all the way almost until 2000, they were still like preaching the satanic panic. And really, on Focus on the Family's website, they still have, to this day, anti-role-playing, anti-fantasy, and anti-Dungeons and Dragons articles. They are without date, without author, and without sources, which is what you expect from your Christian family resources. They're just made up shit about how Satan's coming for you.
Or they reference themselves as experts.
Totally. In the same way that this introduction from James Dobson that references himself as an expert. He says he's been talking about this for a while, and some kids...
And what's worse, some kids who used to be caught up in these games now say that their involvement led them into contact with demons and even Satan worship.
And includes things that are clearly not Christian. He makes a big point of that. Some people have said that D&D put them in contact with demons and led to Satanism.
I want to kill everyone. Satan is good. Satan is our pal.
I mean, it's just fucking gross, because this shit went around Christian circles for years and years. I knew lots of adults who adamantly believed this stuff. They believed that there were groups of Satanists all around us all the time, and they were trying to find ways into like the media that we were consuming and into our culture so they could seduce our children. I fought it so hard. I was convinced that these people existed. They were out to get me. They were putting fucking razor blades in Halloween candy, and they were trying to get me and kill me. And it was because of assholes like fucking James Dobson and Focus on the Family that the adults in my life believed it. I believed it because the adults in my life believed it. So anyway, so the episode opens. We got Jimmy.
What's wrong with Jimmy?
Who's the good kid, and his cousin Len, who's coming to stay with him. And I struggled a little bit with this name, Len?
I think it's short for lenticular clouds. No?
I agree. And I think they did that because they want to make sure no kid would associate with the bad kid, you know?
Yeah, what's a name that no one would have?
Yeah. Leonardo.
Yeah, it's short for Leonardo.
I think it could be Leonard, which I guess is a name a kid hasn't had for 100 years.
No, it's Len with one N because it's short for Len with two N's.
Which is short for Leonardo.
Leonardo leads Donatello dust machine.
Exactly. You got it. Can't believe I have to explain that to you.
So Jimmy sounds young. Len comes to stay with him. And Len immediately starts teasing Jimmy for the fact that he likes Zapazoids, which is, I guess, a video game.
Do you have any Zapazoids?
Zapazoids is a baby toy compared to this.
First off, Len needs to slow his roll. Zapazoids is the best.
I want to play Zapazoids. Sounds fucking legit.
It sounds like a game where you get to eat the pieces at the end.
I'm going to have a hard time with this shit because listening to this episode again really fucked with me. I thought I was going to just like enjoy it and laugh about it. I was fucked up. I was so upset because I realized how manipulated I was as a kid. I realized how I was being fucked with and how abusive these people were in my life, telling me that by liking the harmless things that I wanted to like, that I was letting evil into my house. Fuck them. God.
It's total like control through fear.
Yeah.
For a hope-based religion to assert dominance through fear. So gross.
And it's absolutely tool number 1 in the Christian tool belt. Tool number 2,
poop.
Zapazoid blaster.
Oh, yeah.
So Len is not into Zapazoids because that's kid stuff, but he is into Castles and Cauldrons, which is probably the second or third best D&D analog I've heard.
I was going to say, I've heard some wacky ones. Castles and Cauldrons, I'd play it.
Yeah. Mazes and Monsters.
Mazes and Monsters.
Vaults and Varmints.
Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
Ben and Jerry's.
Beavises and Buttheads.
Bill and Ted's and Excellent. And Adventures.
That one's too much for me. I can't play that one. I'm scared.
Also, it wasn't a good joke, so it's okay. You don't have to play. So in the episode here, when Jimmy discovers the Castles and Cauldrons paraphernalia in Len's bag, Len is excited to share this game with his little cousin. This is where we realize right away how poorly researched this subject was by Christians and how little they actually know about Dungeons and Dragons, because right off the bat, the shit that Len has is, according to the episode, swords and belts and other things.
Yeah, and candles.
Yeah, he has candles and he has a rule book, but swords and belt? Like, what the fuck?
I mean, that
version of D&D comes with swords and belt.
The kind I'm going to start playing from now on, that's for sure.
Fuck yeah, I'm into it. If there was a special edition D&D that was rebranded as Castles and Cauldrons and came with swords and belts, I would pay a lot of money for that.
Hold on, how many belts are we talking?
I mean, at least 2. Unbelievable. I think that somehow they were like combining kids sitting around with bags of Doritos, rolling dice, and LARPing. Live action role playing, right? Running around with foam swords and shit.
Yeah, you think parents would be pumped. Kids are getting exercise. They're learning how to defend themselves.
Yeah, LARPing is really the next level, right? It's when you still get to play the imagination thing, but you get exercise. Win, win, win.
That's what I'm talking about.
Your kid's pasty and pale, playing video games in your house. Get them LARPing.
Totally.
They're already not interested in football. Get them out running around with a foam sword.
You'd be surprised how much energy you get from holding onto a fake sword and whacking your friends with it.
Yeah, boy, we know that.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get into our LARPing experiences later.
Oh, yeah.
Come, let us gingerly touch our tips.
In a lot of depictions of Dungeons and Dragons in TV and movies, LARPing is involved. And I think it's because sitting around a table rolling dice is a really difficult thing to make exciting, even for a few minutes on a TV show. And so,
or scary.
It really takes some work. So Len sells Jimmy on this idea of, you got to try this game. It's really cool. You're going to love it. Jimmy, playing the good Christian kid, is a little trepidatious. He's not super into it, but he's a little sarcastic. He makes jokes, but Len eventually gets him to go out to the woods. And this is where I guess the episode sort of starts to reveal what the first of many dangers they believe that Dungeons and Dragons has for kids. And it's your kid might believe that it's reality and then lose themselves. And so Len convinces Jimmy to close his eyes, and they swing their plastic swords together, which has just nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons. And they're hitting their plastic swords together, and Len is yelling at Jimmy. He's like, you gotta believe. If you just believe hard enough, it'll be real. And then Jimmy starts to hear real swords clanging together and like a real battle. And
it's beautiful.
It's pretty fucking dope,
yeah,
right?
Man.
I wish.
Totally.
Like, he starts hearing real swords, and then there's what I think is supposed to be a scary moment, but honestly, it's kind of rad. Like, they're running around fighting these imaginary monks, fighting them with swords, and it's an exciting moment in the episode. Yeah, Jimmy did it.
Yeah, and it sounds he had a great time. He loved it by the end of that fight. Also, I like how Len was treating Castles and Cauldrons like the best drugs you've ever had. Don't even tell your dad about it, bro. Don't worry, I'll give you some in the woods. And then they he's all right, buddy. Now we're swinging swords. Ooh.
The whole episode, Len insists on keeping it a secret from the parents. No adults are allowed to know about this game. And he says this really weird thing that I think a bunch of parents probably believed was true about D&D and fantasy role-playing games, but is just bullshit. He says that the rule book tells him that they're not allowed to share it with adults.
We shouldn't talk about it right now.
Why not?
Because the book says.
Yeah.
Like as if you bought a Dungeons and Dragons rule book, which was honestly written for adults originally.
Totally.
You know? And the idea that the book would be like, and don't forget, keep this a secret from your parents. So fucking dumb.
Yeah. I'm starting to think Len made up Castles and Cauldrons.
If he did, fucking shooting the golden goose here, that kid made up some good stuff. Like, kid's a genius.
Yeah.
The Odyssey incubator of cool new game ideas.
And when it's successful, he could start his own Len Grant for young artists who love Satan.
You know what? I want to find an old actual witch to come talk to us.
Okay.
I would love to meet a real witch and ask them if they ever rolled a D20, just hoping maybe it would.
They're too scared because they might roll a 1.
I think it's worth the risk.
You're right. I would totally do it.
So at the end of this battle they're having out in the woods, this is the first moment that Len starts to get really creepy here. He's sort of coded in the show as being creepy because at this moment where they're joyous about their imaginary battle and their imaginary victory over imaginary monks, Len grabs Jimmy and says, we have to kneel down and do an incantation.
Now we have to offer our victory incantation, which will lock the black monks into the pit of despair forever.
Jimmy, the good Christian boy, says,
But Neely makes it like a prayer, doesn't it?
And Len's like, it's an incantation. It's not a prayer. It's cool, you know? And they don't actually play the audio of them doing this incantation, but they heavily imply that Jimmy goes along with it. And this leads to what is the first moment in this episode where I got really fucking pissed. And that's because it cuts to Mr. Whitaker, who's the wise old Christian man in town. And Mr. Whitaker feels this pain in his like soul, spirit, and he drops a glass and breaks it because at that moment he can tell that something evil is happening in town, but he doesn't know what it is. He hasn't made the connection.
I was putting these glasses away and suddenly felt bad.
Huh?
Almost as if something terrible is about to happen.
I felt a great disturbance in the force, as if millions of voices suddenly cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced.
His spidey sense was tingling.
And not only are they implying that this is real, that this is something that can happen, because Adventures in Odyssey is not a fantasy world. It's not an imaginary world. I mean, it is a fictional world, but for the intended Christian audience of Adventures in Odyssey, that world is a perfectly functioning example of how our world works. And so when they imply that something like this can happen, when they imply that Mr. Whitaker can have a psychic spike in his brain from something evil happening in town, they're implying that that can happen for real. And just in case anyone listening thinks that Christians don't believe this, they all fucking believe this. I believed it. Everyone in every church I went to, which was a lot, believed it. This is something that is taught in Christian schools. This is something that is explained in detail through Christian organizations like Focus on the Family. The idea that if you are well enough connected to God, you can have a spiritual connection that will warn you about evil things happening. That's a real belief. I had adults at more than one church I went to pull me aside and say that like they had gotten this spiritual feeling about me, and sometimes it was good and sometimes it was bad. They felt something evil about me. One time, an adult said that they sensed that I had been smoking weed.
Smoke weed every day.
Which I also, to my embarrassment, I didn't do until my 30s.
Same.
And I did it for the first time in a state where it was legal. That's how fucking square I was. And so when Mr. Whitaker does this, this is aspirational for adult listeners of this episode. And I suppose for kids too. This is the type of deep connection that Christians want to have. And it's so fucking dangerous because it means that your emotions, your whims, how you're feeling can tell you quote unquote facts about the world. Ah, God, it just, I know I'm going on a rant here. I'm so fucking angry about this.
I too thought like, oh, the pastor, he's connected to God. He knows when I'm goofing off. So when I came to be a certain age as a young man where I was exploring my body vigorously, the thought always popped in my head. I was like, he knows.
Yeah, Leanne just called it the elf on the shelf. Like, right? I absolutely all the time thought that God would tell the more spiritual people around me what I had done.
Totally.
This is embarrassing, but like, let's say I masturbated to the idea of like a girl in my church, you know? I'm like a teenage boy.
Let's say your name's Abigail.
Old Abigail and her counsel. I was into it. And then I come across Abigail's dad at church. I'd be like, oh my God. Why did I masturbate to the daughter of the most spiritual guy in church? God's going to tell him. God's going to tell him I did it. Now he knows.
I fear something terrible has happened.
I'm glad for everyone involved. They can't.
Mr. Whitaker, Whit, as they call him, he becomes the sort of like behind the scenes hero of the story. It's like he's the detective who's like putting together the red string on a map, trying to figure out where this evil feeling is coming from in town. And he's going to come through in the end, spoiler alert, to save the kids from Satan.
A real Olivia Benson.
Wait, a real who?
That's a Law & Order SVU reference.
Oh yeah, yeah. A real Detective Stabler. Real Ice-T. So the show posits that these psychic powers are real, and therefore every listener should believe that they're real. Fucking everyone does. So Len and Jimmy are back home. There's a storm coming, and Len talks about how he likes storms. He talks about how he likes candles. He talks about how he likes shadows. And this is another thing that used to bother me about when I was younger. And like, I liked wearing black. I liked skulls. I liked dark stuff. And there were always Christians who treated that as if it was a gateway to evil.
Totally.
And so the way Len is represented here is just like spot on for the way that anything dark, anything horror, it means that you're on the path to Satan.
The funny thing is, you learn about all that cool stuff from the church. They're like, you better stay away from Slayer. And I'm all, Slayer? That sounds pretty cool, man.
Not sure what a cannibal corpse is, but definitely going to swing by the seas at my local compact disc store.
Yeah, pick up Hammer Smashed Face.
Adventures in Odyssey, for being like a well-produced show, it has no subtlety at all. And so Len, the bad kid, he likes everything bad. He does everything bad. He has no redeeming qualities. And Jimmy, the good kid, is just like, he's sarcastic and he's a little boy who's bad at school and he's a little lazy and he's fucking like, he's Opie from Andy Griffith's Show. So frustrating. Jimmy thinks candles are creepy, but Len likes them.
I like candles. I like the shadows they make.
Yeah, that was a weird one. Like, look into this bag of goodies I've got. some candles. This one's eucalyptus. Like,
yeah, right. Well, this is when Len reveals what his sort of secret agenda is. Len is interested in Castles and Cauldrons because he wants to gain abilities.
When you play the game as long as we have, you begin to develop power.
And he gives some very specific examples to Jimmy here, which I think are interesting because I want to know, maybe it'll take some more research, but I want to know whether these abilities have some sort of history in Christian media or in Christian news. Here are the 3 things he says that Castles and Cauldrons can teach you. Moving things with your mind. He believes, he knew someone who played Castles and Cauldrons who could look through the eyes of a bird and see what the bird is seeing. And the game can teach you to read someone else's heart. Those are fucking intense, right?
Yeah, and I'm in. He would have won me over right there. I've been all, light those candles up. I'm looking at bird eyes.
Those sound pretty great. And honestly, the first 2 aren't even harmful. Like,
yeah,
reading someone's heart, maybe there's a case you could make for that being a little intrusive. But moving things with your mind, I guess that's evil.
Wasn't one of the other ones like you can hold your breath for 2 minutes or something?
You can flip an omelet without it cracking.
Or he did the finger trick. He's all, and also this. And he did the pull your thumb off trick. Jimmy's all, holy shit.
You can watch Old Yeller without crying at all.
Dang. Sign me up.
You can ride your bicycle off the path. No goat heads.
Oh, you know what? That's worth it. Minus, even if that was the only one. You can tell what's in the refrigerator without opening it. Ooh.
You could remember what's in the refrigerator 5 seconds after you close it, not have to open it again. You can know for sure there's no food that you want when you knew that 10 minutes ago without having to go back and be like, maybe this time there's something I missed.
These are great. Sign me up for Castles and Cauldrons.
I know, right? So Len gets really creepy. There's only a few really genuinely scary moments. And I mean that like objectively, like the show actually plays on real horror tropes and actually like makes good scary moments a few times. And one of them is when Len stops talking, like the voice actor stops talking and you just hear Jimmy being like,
"You're starting to get spooky, Len. Len, don't stare at me like that. Len, quit playing around."
Yeah, that was creepy.
It's good. Genuinely creepy. It's a good moment. Well-directed, well-produced show, and like well-voice-acted show. Which brings me to an important point. Later on, there's a character named Connie. Connie's a regular on the show. The character of Connie has been on the show for 40 years now or something like that. And the voice actor who plays Connie was in the Dungeons & Dragons children's cartoon. And then she had to play this character who's like, what do you mean, Dungeons & Dragons, you know?
Well, the place is empty and I've locked all the doors.
I thought I was helping her, Dungeon Master.
Yeah, she's got to make that money. Dungeons and Dragons, Adventures in Odyssey.
She played Sheila the Thief on D&D, the Saturday morning cartoon. And she also played Rolf on Muppet Babies.
Oh,
multi-talented.
I know what you mean, Kermit.
Anyway, Len keeps insisting that to Jimmy that they have to keep the game secret from adults. And every time Jimmy tries to talk to an adult, Len interrupts him. And the boys, they come to a meeting with Mr. Whitaker, and Len immediately doesn't like him. Mr. Whitaker's got his psychic antenna up, feeling for what's going on. Len says that Mr. Whitaker is what is called an interferer, interfering with,
yeah, my cat's one of those too when it stands in front of the TV.
My hounds are a couple of those when they howl super loud in the middle of recording.
Yeah, queen interfering.
Well, so the boys are still playing Castles and Cauldrons. They have a quest to do, and they fuck it up somehow. It all happens off camera, so we don't get to find out what happens. But we know that they're trapped in a spell, and they have to find a way to break it. And Len makes the case that they need to summon Shalman to help them break the spell.
Shalman will show us.
Shalman? What's a shaman?
He's the one who comes to help the game players. He helps keep Castles and Cauldrons alive. And he'll break us out of the spell of the Wizards of Kith.
There's the heavy implication here that Shalman is a demon, right?
Yeah.
It almost sounds like shaman, but it sounds like they're saying Shalman. like Shalma.
I think it's just like how some people say salmon and some people say salmon.
I think that really could be it. I mean, it would be pretty innocent to find out he was just talking about salmon the whole time. Like at the end when Shalman's supposed to appear and Jimmy's like panicking and freaking out if Len just opens up a little container. He's like, I made salmon skin rolls.
What a sweetie.
This is the 90s. There's probably an Adventures in Odyssey episode all about how evil it is to introduce like foreign foods.
Oh, geez, probably.
Japanese foods are actually based originally on like Shinto traditions that are just the devil's way of getting into our cuisine. In the Bible, it says to cook your food thoroughly.
First, the games. Then, the salmon. What's next? Our beloved pop radio stars?
So, they've decided that they have to go camping. And Jimmy's dad confronts him in the bath. And we know that Jimmy's in the bath because he's embarrassed at first. He's like, you're going to stay in here with me? And his dad's like, well, I got to talk to you. And then you hear water splashing while they're talking. And like, it's like splashing like Jimmy's in the bath. It's fine. Maybe it's just weird to me because like, I definitely didn't grow up in a household where anyone went into the bathroom while anyone was doing anything. You definitely didn't go in and be like, about what we were talking about earlier. Like, go ahead and let me know. It turns out that Len was sent to stay with his cousin because parents were concerned about him because they think that he's drinking or doing drugs. And Jimmy says a really funny line. He's like,
I don't think he even smokes.
Not even.
The delivery of the line feels like Jimmy's like a hardcore smoker. He's like, nah, he doesn't even smoke. Definitely not a drinker. I don't know.
He doesn't even smoke. Like he says to his dad, because his dad smokes. He's like, he doesn't even smoke, fucking lame-o.
I can't even convince Len to come in here and hang out with me while I'm bathing.
What a square. All he wants to do is summon demons and make out with Shalman.
Yeah. I tried to get him to look at my Zapazoids. Wouldn't even check him out. I'm going to have to cut that shit.
He gave me some cream for my Zapazoids.
There's the joke. I couldn't find it. All right. So his dad is reassured. He's like, cool, go camping. There's a weird moment where he's like, but you come in right away if it's raining. I don't know what the fuck that's about. It's like Chekhov's rain. Like it never leads anywhere. Anyway.
They made their tent out of toilet paper. That's probably why.
Got it. So it cuts over then to Whitaker and Connie. And Connie's just there to be someone for Whitaker to like talk to. And he just says like, I've been thinking about fantasy role-playing games because like, again, the implication is that God spoke directly to Whit's head, told him what's going on. It's fantasy role-playing games. And so Connie acts as the audience proxy here so she can hear all about fantasy role-playing games and how they're evil. He says this really fucked up line here. Whitaker says,
Sometimes people don't understand what they're dealing with. We play around with things that seem harmless but are just the opposite. There are evil spiritual forces at work in this world, Connie, and often we don't realize the doors we're opening to let them loose in our lives. There are some things it's good to be afraid of.
And that is the fucking thesis of this episode. I mean, listen to how vague that is. Sometimes there are people who don't understand what they're dealing with. We play around with things that seem harmless. Imagine the spectrum of things that seem harmless.
Totally.
And any of those things could be just the opposite. There are evil spiritual forces somewhere. We don't realize what we're doing and we loose them on our lives and we should be afraid of them. It's, God, like
so nebulous.
And it's a fucking brilliant piece of writing. It's almost political. Not a political message, but it's almost political in its perfect spin of nothing into something, right? Be afraid of a thing. Be afraid of a something. Of a what, God, it's a brilliant piece of writing. It really is.
Now I gotta add fantasy games to my list of rattlesnakes, quicksand, and the Bermuda Triangle. Those are the things I'm afraid of.
Well, see, those things are dangerous on the surface. This is telling you things you think aren't dangerous could be dangerous. So now you have to start examining everything. Leanne says, be afraid of anything unfamiliar and unapproved.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Leanne also says Shalman was an Assyrian king in the Bible. What do we do without you, Leanne?
Thank you, Leanne. But why does he want to summon that guy? What's he going to do against a wizard? Come on, Len.
I mean, we learned pretty quickly that Shalman is probably the devil, because they get to their campsite, they set up their tent or whatever, and Len says they have to perform a ceremony to summon Shalman and get power. Len gives an incredible speech here about the idea of power, and he's using it to convince Jimmy to get on board with the game. But the speech is so perfectly crafted and so spot on about power that I'm not sure what I'm supposed to take away from it. Very convincing. This is what he says.
Everybody wants power. You can't survive if you don't have it. Ask your dad about the company he works for. Who makes it? The guys who are powerful. Who has the best time at school? Who gets what they want whenever they want it? The ones who have power. Don't you want it?
That's fucking intense, right? I don't get the message here. Is the message of this episode anti-power? I don't believe for a second that any Christians left listening to this episode with the belief that power is somehow a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's part of our culture to pretend that we don't want power, but Len's exactly right. I mean, power is how we operate in this world.
I think his speech would have been better had he been shredding a guitar solo while he did it, but that's just me being a Castles and Cauldrons snob.
What was your reaction to that, either when you listened to it in the episode or when you heard me read it right now?
I think it's them assuming that that's why kids play this game, to open the doors and get power. And if that is the case, it sounds like they're scared of their kids.
Sounds like they're trying to teach their kids not to want agency over your own life, don't want control over your own life, because like only bad kids like this who are serving Satan want power over their own life. God, I really want to spend some time thinking more about this and analyze it a little more, because I feel like there's something really sinister going on at this moment. I don't know.
Yeah, because that's supposed to be the big fear that we don't want to happen to Jimmy, right? Is that he's going to be seduced to the dark side?
Here's the thing. It might be that simple in a lot of listeners' minds. Like there's a good side and a bad side. And if Jimmy plays this game, he's going to, I don't know. It really goes off the rails here. Len, he rolls a die. He calls it casting lots, which is really telling because a lot of Christians don't roll dice. They consider it gambling, or in some cases they consider it casting lots, which is what was done to Jesus's clothes while he was hanging on the cross. The soldiers took his clothes and they said, hey, these are nice clothes. Who gets to keep them? And they cast lots. In other words, threw dice to see who got to keep his clothes. So it was always considered an evil act to play with dice when I was growing up. So Len rolls the die.
First, we cast lots for the number of entry. It must be Shalman's number. 6. Perfect.
He just moves on. That's the one he was looking for. That's a clear message about it being like, and his number is 6. That Bible. And then this really amazing like radio moment happens where you can start to hear the wind transform into a demon, like yelling.
Listen. Do you hear it?
No, it's the rain. It's the tree.
No, it's him. He's come.
Yeah, that was like some David Lynch,
right?
Sound editing. It was pretty cool.
It's pretty rad, right? It sounds good.
So I'm saying, if he had that shredding guitar solo, and then the episode just ended, he'd be like, wow, because Jimmy joined Iron Maiden after that.
You can't stop it. He'll come. Shalman! Shalman!
So at this moment, Jimmy's freaking out. He's the good Christian boy. He realizes that this is too evil for him now, and he's starting to panic, and he doesn't understand what's happening.
Doesn't he say, like, we need blood?
Len tries to get Jimmy to cut his hand, and they have to use blood for the ritual. I need your blood for this ritual. Like, right. So imagine little kid me listening to this.
Dang, dude.
The thing I have in my head is that the reason I know that D&D is evil is because my dad had been there and seen these evil D&D employees with their daggers trying to convince my dad to be a part of this thing. And then I hear this episode, and here it is, clear as day. D&D involves blood oaths and like letting demons in. It couldn't have been more clear to me.
Not today, Satan. Not today.
This was a message from God. This episode was a message from God. It was so clear to me and so fucked up.
I'm 100% sure had I encountered that at the same age, it would have fucked me up.
I mean, I believed a lot of things for not good reasons, but I think I had an okay reason to believe this one. And that reason was that I was brainwashed and like pressured into some very wacky ideas. So, Jimmy doesn't want to cut his hand, and he can hear the demon coming, and he's upset. And right then, Mr. Whitaker and Jimmy's dad burst into the tent, and Mr. Whitaker says a weird thing. He says, "What's all this stuff?" He looks at the stuff and then he says, "What's this, a board of talisman?"
What's going on here?
Mr. Whitaker!
Jimmy, is everything all right?
Dad!
What is all this? Castles and Cauldrons book?
That's mine. Leave it alone.
A board of talisman?
And I spent some time researching board of talisman. A little tough because there's a board game called Talisman, but I couldn't find anything. I looked up talisman board. I know that there are lots of witch tools and witch artifacts that like practicing Wiccans and witches use these days. And I'm sure that there's something called a talisman board or board of talisman, but there is no like readily available board of talisman, nor are there guidelines anywhere online for how to build a board of talisman or where to get one. So I don't know what the fuck this was supposed to be in this episode.
Yeah, I'm also trying to think of like in D&D what it could be, and I'm like,
it's just scary words thrown together.
Well, he couldn't burst into the tent and be all, "Is that a board of Monopoly?"
I don't know. It bothered me. And you know what? I know Leanne, and I know right now she is furiously Googling. And so you tell me, Leanne, if you come up with anything, yeah?
Board of talisman for all your talisman needs.
So here's the second moment that pisses me off the most in this episode. Whit grabs the kid's stuff. He grabs Len's stuff, like the board of talisman, and breaks it. You can hear it in the episode.
I'm going to take care of this board first.
Hey, that's mine!
Was yours.
Okay, both of you, back to the house.
Was yours. It's so fucking cruel to do to a kid.
I know, right? It's like in the process of saving Jimmy, they just 100% guaranteed Len is going to fuck off forever because of you broke his shit. He's not going to want to go to church ever, not when the church man broke his shit.
It also implies that the stuff has real power. Like the devil was coming, Shalman was actually coming until Whit broke the thing. Like it's some fucking adventure movie, you know? Like you like snap the magic rod over your knee before like, you know, fucking Zargon returns or whatever.
It'd be awesome if afterwards Whit's like, "All right, everyone kneel. Now we have to bind him with this
this incantation." Oh my god, that is so good. Oh my god.
"Don't worry, I used your board of talisman as a sacrifice." Like, whoa, Whit.
First, get Len down. Let's pull his arms off. All right. This climax scene ends with Whit destroying the toys of a child.
What is all this? A board of
dicks.
And becoming the hero in doing so, somehow. And the next scene we get is everyone chilling on a porch swing. Whit and Jimmy and Jimmy's dad are all there. At the end, we find out secondhand that Len has gone to get counseling from a pastor who knows about this sort of thing.
They should have kept it in. I want to see the Adventures in Odyssey Snyder cut.
Which makes me furious because this is one of the most dangerous things in my experience about churches is that a church leader can substitute their status in the church for professional experience. So a church leader can just be a counselor, which is how they're somehow qualified to teach kids to not be gay anymore, you know? And I'm sure there are church leaders with real world education in counseling and therapy, but there are millions of parents in this country who will take their kid to a church leader before they would ever let a professional get their hands on them, you know?
Yeah, unfortunately.
These same church experts who know about this sort of thing are like occult experts who talk to police, testify in trials, really facilitated the satanic panic.
Totally.
And that's the implication here is that they didn't say Len's getting counseling. Len had some underlying issues, you know, about this. Len had some stresses and anxieties about this and that. He was bullied at school. There was a million story outs here that they didn't take. Instead, they just said, he's talking to a pastor. They point out he's getting counseling from a pastor who knows about this sort of thing. I don't know. I could rant about this forever. Here's what we need. We need a button you can hit to get me to calm down. That's what we need. Because I'm going to get worked up in this fucking show, and you need to be able to hit a button and be like, Christian,
okay,
it's all good.
We get one of those for each other because I have a tendency to do that as well.
How about this? You find a soothing noise for me, and I'll find a soothing noise for you, and we'll play them for each other next episode.
Okay, deal.
Anyway, that's the end of the episode. Everything's good. Len is off the show. I don't think he ever returned. Jimmy is saved from accidentally becoming a Satanist because he played a board game.
Oof, close one. Don't worry, they took care of Len.
Like, what could you take away from that as a kid besides, like, oh, the devil is around every corner, you know?
Yeah, in everything. In the games your children play. Like, scared parents probably more than kids. I'm sure kids probably were scared about it for a minute until the next scary thing came along, but parents were like, it was just a growing list for the parents, and the kids could only be scared of one thing at a time.
I don't really have a good way to end this. I
just end it with those Monty Python dudes slapping their heads with the paddles.
Man, this is such an emotional topic to start off with for me that I don't really don't have a good way to close it out or end it.
Hold on, I know someone who can help. Oh, is that Shalman? Did Shalman just show up?
Hey, boys. It's me, Shalman, pronounced with a hard shh. Show sounds great. You guys are rocking it. Thanks for the shout out. Stay healthy.
My real problem here is that Shalman sounds like a much eviler guy called voice actor Bill Cosby, who played Fat Albert. Shalbert, that's who it is.
He stole my act. He stole my act.
We didn't hear it. He was there the whole time.
Just chilling. Hey.
It's me.
Wherever games are being played. But
I would love to listen to a radio drama about Shalman. He's the misunderstood angel who's just like, he's an ugly looking angel, and everyone's like, what are you, a demon? He's like,
no, I'm an angel. I'm one of the cool ones with like the 100 eyes.
Yeah, but isn't it true you only show up when people like light candles?
And people are lighting lovely scented candles. I'll show up. I'll shake my booty around. I don't give a fuck. I like lavender. Little sandalwood. I have this one that smells like a cinnamon roll. God shows up when you burn a bush. What's the problem? I'm just trying to hang out while you're all over my tits about it.
Yeah, but don't people like cut their hand and bleed when you show up?
Maybe. It takes me a while to get there. People start doing shit before I show up.
You always have to tear the arms off dolls?
Don't kink shame me, Christian. How can you resist?
When I was 17, I got a 40 wing job from a seraphim.
You know, I'm into wing stuff. Call me crazy. I just like, pretty face, 7 heads, 10 crowns. Nothing special. Classic beauty. Like in the good old days.
Oh my God. All right. I think we got it. I think we got to end it. Let's say goodbye to everyone. We hope you listen to our dumb podcast.
Yeah, have some laughs and crazies with us.
Yeah, I really do hope that people come along with us on this journey, because as weird and bonkers as it was for me to share like this vulnerable story from my childhood, I think it'll do me good to get it out there. And I'm kind of looking forward to sharing some of the other fucked up stuff that happened to me, in the hopes that it reminds people that this is unfortunately normal. Unfortunately normal.
Sounds like a candle we should make for Shalman.
Demonic generic.
Thanks for sharing, man. That was not a... that couldn't have been easy, man. Thanks for sharing. I didn't know a lot of that stuff, so it like, hey, we're better buds now, and that's cool too.
Man, we've been friends for so many years, and there's stories like that we haven't shared, and I think that's also really normal. I think a lot of ex-religious, post-religious people just don't face that kind of stuff. Maybe you come across it in therapy, but it would do some good to like normalize these types of stories. Not something to be ashamed of.
Totally. And like you said, it's unfortunately normal, so it's nice to not feel alone that way.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, brother.
All right. Love you guys.
This is great. Love you too, brother.
Can't wait to hear it all edited.
Me too, bye.
Heretic Party is produced and edited by me, Christian Atley. Joe is our co-host and resident funny guy. And Leon Collins is our content producer, researcher, and Bible trivia champion. She's got the creds. Follow us on social media at Heretic Party on Instagram and Twitter, and reach out to us on our website, hereticparty.com. We've already had some backlash from religious friends and family, so please take a moment to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. It would really help us to feel better about this project, which is something that we really believe is important. Remember, Happy Lost Souls, your stories deserve to be heard. You deserve friends and community who listen and support you. If you're struggling, recoveringfromreligion.org is a great nonprofit resource for individuals who have questions about changing or leaving their faith. They have a support hotline you can call anytime. We'll see you on Sunday, March 20th for our next episode. Be good humans. Peace.
You can't stop it. He'll come.
We need blood. We need blood. Is that a board of Monopoly?
Not today, Satan. Not today.
Heretic Party is a member of Rad Pantheon, a collective of podcasters, artists, musicians, and other creative types who do our best to connect you with rad stuff you'll enjoy. If you like what we do, check out radpantheon.com or look for @radpantheon on Instagram or Twitter.